how does it feel to see yourself in these early photos and films?
Well, first of all, I only remember being in one scene on a wagon when I was telling the little girl to get up on the wagon. I don't remember being in the church, so it was kind of a surprise to see myself in so many scenes in the film. But it did bring back memories. I remember it reminded me that on the 4th of July, I would float cherry bombs down this river, try to make them blow up under the bridge that you saw them crossing where the Indians were singing. And a lot of bad things. That was one of the one of the nicer bad things.
Well, Patrick, when the movies would break, I know your dad had the core company of a lot of the same people, the same crew together. So when those films would break, what was the hiatus like for your dad and you kids?
Yeah, it wasn't a typical. He didn't live the typical Hollywood life. Although, bless you, he did have a core group that were not only professionals that he worked with, but they were his friends off the screen too. So you spent a lot of time with Paul Fix and Ward Bond and Dobie Carey and the group. It was my dad's group. It was Ford's group. Really, it started with Jack Ford using all the same people. But one interesting thing, and I'm sure Claude will agree with this, you work with somebody, and then you disappear and you go your separate ways, and you may not see these people for months or even years.
Or 72 years, right?
Well, no, I've seen Claude for the last 30 years. I spent every summer with him. But yeah, I mean, it can be a while, and when you see these people, you can sit down and it's like you just saw them yesterday. I mean, you have this kind of relationship that you build during the filming, and especially if you're working on location, because you're working in the studio. When the day ends, you go home to your home. When you're working on location, you end up going to dinner with these people and living in the same hotel or motel or wherever, tent, if you happen to be on Monument Valley. So you're spending more than 12 hours. You're spending 24 hours a day with these people. You get intense relationships, and when you see them years later, it's like, oh, I just had a conversation with you yesterday, and you sit down. It's just like old home week. And that feeling that you have at the end of a location when everybody leaves, it's really a sense of abandonment. Yeah, I mean, emotionally, intellectually, you don't feel it, but emotionally, when you're younger, you do feel that. Oh, I don't know. It's crazy stuff that happens. I remember doing McClintock. We had this big mud scene, sliding down this mud hill, and everybody eventually goes down this thing. And when we were working, it was in the summertime. It was 90 degrees in Tucson, but this particular scene was shot in Tombstone, and it was about 40 degrees there. This mud in the morning, they had to put space heaters in there to thaw it out because it froze overnight. And this is what we were going in. And a sense of abandonment. I was like the last person to go down this slide. I looked up, and everybody was gone. The camera crew had broken. Everything was struck, and they were all gone. It was a pretty lonely feeling.
You say that, it's right. I between 6, well, actually I was 5 when I shot the pilot, but between 6 and 12, I had the family of Boone. Fess was my dad. Pat, I had my own mom, so Pat wasn't quite there, but the key grip, the prop guy was an Eagle Scout, and he would show me all my Boy Scouting stuff. Even people in the commissary who this was my family for 6 years. But you get behind the gate, and then one day, driving down the street, your mom says, "Oh, well, looks like we're not going back to work anymore." and you don't even get a chance to say goodbye to anybody, or, it's nice to see you again. And all of a sudden, those gates that would almost go up while your car was driving up, now they're closed, and why are you here? So yeah, it's a thing, and I do a lot of work for kid actors, and that's one of the things that really needs to be addressed. As like you said, I'm very proud to be a part of Looking Ahead now, which creates a community for the young actors, and we take them from doing everything from painting park benches to the motion picture home to talk to other actors to paintballing and bowling, because when we grew up, the other kids you saw were your competition. They want your job. So you didn't. And if you weren't that, you were working. So you never got any of the socialing. Socialing? There's a new word for you all to take home.
You don't get much of an education if you can't.
I like the word.
Okay. All right. Everybody's telling school stories. We'll keep this amongst us, right? We won't tell anybody. I was very happy with my academic. I actually liked studying. I did very well in school. But the only failing grade I ever got in school was Pepperdine University, their theater department.
Get out of here. That is just rude. That is so rude.
But true.
I just to jump topics slightly, we were talking about the Cowboys with Bobby, but somebody in that film who created a characterization that generated a lot of hate for him over the years. He knew it was going to happen when he did it. Bruce Dern.
Oh.
Bobby, what was Bruce Dern like on the Cowboys?
Well, I don't know if anybody on the panel here has ever met him, but he's the kindest, gentlest guy you'd ever want to meet.
Yeah.
Until you turn the camera on and he's playing the bad guy. And he does Sinister better than anybody, as you all know. And I remember when they were going to shoot the bit where he grabs that little kid and he shoves his head in the creek. He says, you're going to keep quiet, right, little kid? And he picks him up, and the kid's like, and he jams him down in there again. Well, he had not told anybody he was going to do that except for the cameraman. So the cameraman would know to follow him down to the creek. And he did that. It was one take, and that kid was terrified. And as soon as they said cut, Bruce was all over him, like, it's okay, man. It's just play acting. He just settled this poor little kid down that he just scared the bejesus out of. But, John Wayne said to Bruce, I think before they started, they said, Bruce, you're going to be hated for this. He says, yeah, but they're going to love me in Berkeley.
Hello. Hello.
Well, Patrick, that's a tough scene in the Cowboys where Bruce takes the beating, Duke kicks his ass, and then Bruce shoots him in the back. What was it like to even watch that?
Unfortunately, I never saw the movie. You're asking the wrong guy. He wasn't killed in that many movies, and so it's not fun. It's not fun to see that.
Also, Rob, he wasn't shot in the back. He was shot in the gut.
Okay.
Yeah, he hit him in the elbow. And then
Apparently, you didn't see the movie either, Rob.
I've been afraid to see it. I too don't like to see my heroes die.
Yeah,
So, well, you worked with Bruce again later in Coming Home.
that's correct. And when he wasn't shooting, like at lunchtime, he'd eat lunch, real light lunch, real quick, and then he'd go off jogging. Bruce is a big runner. He loves to run. I don't like to run, as you can see. But, boy, in Coming Home, he really delivered the goods on somebody with PTSD. And I thought that was a really good message that film brought to the American public, because nobody really had been dealing with PTSD yet. We didn't have those initials yet. I mean, we had shell shocked, and that was about it.
Well, that's a great movie too, and it's one that people really don't talk about because it's a tough one to watch. But John Voight, I think, got an Oscar for that too.
Yeah, so did Jane.
Yeah.
And in fact, when John Voight did that film, he never got out of the wheelchair during the day because we were working with real paraplegics, and he was friendly with them, and he didn't want to damage that friendship by getting up out of the chair at the end of the day and walking away. So he'd stay in the chair till everything was kind of put away, and then he would kind of sneak off the lot.
Cheryl, on the Republic lot, because your dad, that was his home. Was it a home for you with all those people? And like some of those films like The Bells of Rosarita, where your mom was in it, Gabby Hayes was in it, the Sons of the Pioneers were in it, plus Wild Bill Elliott and Sunset Carson and a lot of the Republic stars, Bob Livingston. What were those films like for your dad?
I think he really enjoyed it. Although, the one that gets me is the one that I was in, Trail of Robin Hood, with him. And there were tons of everybody, all of the cowboy heroes that were working at Republic at that time were all on there. And, I mean, you know how guys are when they're close friends. All they did was rib each other and kid each other and say really not nice things to each other. And Jack Holt was on that film. In fact, my only line was, "May I please have your autograph, Mr. Holt?" And I called him Mr. Holt because everybody on that set called him Mr. Holt. Jack Holt had been a huge silent star and in the early talkies and all of those cowboys, be they wranglers on the set or stuntmen or the crew, everybody called him Mr. Holt. And it made such an impression on me at 10, seeing somebody where they all joked with each other, where they were all so respectful of that man and what he had accomplished. So that was different. But with the crew, when Dad left Republic and started his own production company to do the half hours, his crew went with him. And I found that really unusual. I hadn't heard of anybody else that had done that. I mean, with John Wayne, that was, as you said, Patrick, that was Ford's company of players that just continued. But at Republic, I mean, Dad is the only one I think that happened with. And they were together for several years while he did the TV shows.
You know, there's a Western that people don't talk about much, and Claude was one of the stars, and it's about a pair of brothers. They're moving some horses from one location to another. It's beautifully shot in black and white. Some prisoners escape. It's a very violent opening. It's almost a Western film noir. The name of the film is Roughshod. The villains chasing the brothers are John Ireland, and he is really, really mean. The brothers along the way pick up a wagon full of really cute, nice, friendly prostitutes. And Claude, you were about what? How old were you when you made that film? Because there's a lot of wonderful horseback riding in that too.
I was 12 years old, and
You were in the wagon with the prostitutes?
you better believe it.
Growing up in Hollywood isn't all that bad, okay?
That's the schooling we're here to learn about.
Anyway, we made the film in Bridgeport, and we lived in tents for 3 months while we were making that. And that's where I really learned how to horseback ride, because I started, when they go from one set to another, there'd be sometimes 1 or 2 miles, and I would always ride with the wranglers and the horses. And that's where I got to do that. But the women were Gloria Graham, someone named Myrna Dell,
Martha Heyer.
Martha Heyer, Jeff Donnell.
Oh my God!
So those were the girls, the dance hall girls that we were trying to save. And I spent a lot of time with them. It was fun. I was 12 years old. And I was telling Pat the other night that Myrna Dell particularly liked me. And she said, I'm with you, honey. You just come with me anywhere we want to go. So in 2000, I was at the Academy Awards when they had on stage everyone who had received one. And I got a letter from Myrna Dell out of the blue. And she said, "My dear Claude, I saw you on TV the other night, and it brought back many memories. And she said, I just want you to know that when we were in Bridgeport, you were too young for me then, but you're too old for me now.
Well, that's a wonderful movie, and I know you're all going to want to see it again now. Now, we should probably open it up to see if anybody has any questions for this stellar panel that we have here.
School, you went to school.
So, how did you guys get tested?
Well, they had, the teachers filled out reports on the day's accomplishments or lack thereof, and at the end of a quarter or however the periods were broken up, they tabulate it, and you'd get A, B, C, D, D minus, or whatever. And at the end of the school year, just like a regular teacher, they add it all up, and you get your grade. That's how it happened.
Yeah.
This is for Mr. Wayne. What is your favorite John Wayne film, and what is your favorite film that you made?
The John Wayne is tough. I mean, I have several of them for several different reasons. Red River comes to mind. I loved him in The Quiet Man.
Yes.
And I think probably his finest performance as an actor, I mean, it fleshed out vulnerable character, was probably The Shootist, which was a tough film for me to watch for a long time.
Yeah.
And for me, the film that I really enjoyed the best was, from a work standpoint, was Sinbad. So I was on exotic locations. We were in Malta and Spain and where's Petra? That's in Jordan, England, and working with Janie Seymour. I mean, what can I say?
Yeah.
On Sinbad for just a minute, because you're fighting nothing, that then Ray Harryhausen, the genius, creates these skeletons with swords to come in and fight. What was that like to rehearse with nothing?
Yeah, I mean, it ended up really, all of the action was choreographed routines, like dance routines. Very strict parameters. He would watch through the lens and know where you had to be, and if you were over here, they would have to shoot it again and retake. So you had very strict parameters to work in, and you couldn't be thinking about this. You couldn't have a frown on your face while you're doing it. You had to be in the part too at the same time. So tricky business, but very rewarding. It came out pretty good. He was a much richer character than what you saw in most of the films. Great sense of humor, which you saw rarely in films. Much more fleshed out, and really the only time he even played more than reaching out and taking a risk was in The Shootist. The rest of the time, he was in a place. And the reason he chose to work that way was that his mentor, Harry Carey Sr., when my dad started to get popular, and he was telling Harry that he was going to work in all these different pictures and play these different characters, and Harry Carey said, no, you're going to stay in this, what the people want to see. They want you to be this person. You can have different stories, surrounded with different people, have different names, but they want to see that person. And my dad chose to believe that, right or wrong, good or bad, he was a success. That was why.
Well, my dad did the same. He'd been making pictures for about 3 years when a major studio went to Republic and asked them to be able to take my dad on loan, and they wanted him to play a heavy. And Dad wouldn't do it. He said by that time his audience was kids. And he said, I don't want to confuse them. So he chose to stay the good guy. Worked well for him.
You guys had to work with stuntmen. Were you protected from the rougher element of life when you were kids on the set?
Well, I remember that on the Cowboys, the cast was half actors and half real cowboys. And needless to say, the stunt doubles for us were all very, very much real cowboys. They competed in rodeo, and they were the real deal. And we trained, the actors trained for 3 months prior to the start of the film to be handy on a horse. So unless it was something where it was actually truly dangerous, we did all our own stuff, which drove these young stunt guys crazy because they wanted to do stuff. And they basically would double us when we were in school or something, and it was a faraway shot. The long riders, my stunt player was Mike McGaha, a very good stuntman, and I let him do everything.
And you looked really good in that film.
I looked really good doing everything.
They did have trouble getting stunt people on the Boone show for me because, you can't just get another little kid. We used little people. So Billy Barty, I don't know if you remember him.
Sure.
He never wanted to admit it, but the first year maybe he was my stunt doubler for a while. And then so they'd let him do a stunt if I had to, roll down a hill or, fall. They would do it, and then the director would look at me because the body didn't look anything at all like my body. And so I got to do a lot of my own stunts, which I loved.
Just out of curiosity, for those of you on the panel who have children or maybe grandchildren, how has acting transitioned, or let's say film life transitioned down through your family? Do you have participants at the younger generations who are still involved?
I have 3 children, and my oldest daughter is an actress. Oh, well. She's good, though.
I have 7 children, 2 sons and 5 daughters, and they're all very happy, and they're not in the movie business.
Now I feel like a slacker. I only have 5 kids. And out of that, one of them pursued it, and he's now, I think, just starting to find he likes behind the camera better than in front of the camera.
Smart man.
Okay, Cheryl.
Well, with the Rogers family, the only one that's out there all the time is my brother Dusty, and he's now the lead singer with the Sons of the Pioneers. A couple of others have dabbled in it and enjoy it, but I know I liked being behind the camera much better, and worked KCET for a bit and did some stuff there with them behind the cameras and loved it.
I have 4 children. My 2 older children are attorneys. My 3rd child is an investment banker, and my 4th child is going for his PhD in biochemistry.
Yeah. All right. Smart decisions.
I have 1 son, and he's the one back here shooting who told Larry to get the heck out of the way. He was blocking the camera. So good on you, Robbie.
Yeah, well, you always got to let them know where you're at.
I was curious about Mr. Jarman's discovery. You said at age 10 you were plucked out of Nashville and taken to Hollywood. How were you discovered?
I was discovered because Clarence Brown was not happy with the people who were coming in to be tested by the talent scouts, and he decided he wanted to go out himself. And he flew to 5 southern cities with an assistant, and he would go into the head of the Board of Education in a city, for example, in Nashville, introduce himself and say, I would like a letter of recommendation from you to the principals of various schools in Nashville, and I want to be able to go in and take a look at kids in the 5th grade, because that would be 10 years old, and that's what I was looking for. And he said, if I can do that, then if I see someone I want to talk to, I want to be able to talk to that child. If I don't, I'll leave, and no one will know why I was even there. And he came to my school on a Friday afternoon at 10 to 3, and I was taking down Valentine's, and he saw me, and he said to his assistant, that's Jody. Wow. And they took me in, had me come into the office, talk to me, said, I'd like to come by later and talk to you. And I went home and I said, Mom, these 2 guys want to come over and talk to you. So they did, and they took some pictures, and then they said, have you ever heard of the yearling? I said, no. They said, do you know anything about acting? I said, well, I've been in school plays, and I've been in the little theater group, but, nothing like this, and I go to the movies every Saturday. And he said, well, would you be interested in coming to Hollywood for a test? And at this point, my father got involved, and so we looked on it. We were going out to Hollywood take a test, and he took a 2-week vacation, and we thought we'll take a train out to Hollywood, do a test, nothing will happen. And I ended up spending 3 months, and I never was tested, and I was going to school, and that's when I was going to the MGM school. And then they started having me test with people who were being considered for the role of my mother. And then my father said, well, what about Claude? So, well, he's got the role. Said, it's my decision, and he's got the role. So you just quit your job, and you come take care of Claude. And that's how I got in. And it was
Wow.
totally out of the blue. I was selected solely for my looks. And then, of course, I had to work with him and try to flesh out the role, which took a long time.
Oh, that's a good question.
That is a
We'll start
really-
at this end because we saw like a 6 or 7-year-old Patrick in Rio Grande last night. How does it feel to see yourself in these early photos and films?
Well, first of all, I only remember being in one scene on a wagon when I was telling the little girl to get up on the wagon. I don't remember being in the church, so it was kind of a surprise to see myself in so many scenes in the film. But it did bring back memories. I remember it reminded me that on the 4th of July, I would float cherry bombs down this river, try to make them blow up under the bridge that you saw them crossing where the Indians were singing. And a lot of bad things. That was one of the one of the nicer bad things.
Cute little Israel.
It is interesting because, like you say, there's some things that you remember, and then there are other things I don't even remember doing that. And then there was something I was watching the other day, and I knew my next lines. And my wife will tell you, I'm not good with the shopping list when I make it to the market. But all of a sudden, the lines just kept coming back to me for that particular scene. So for me, it's kind of fun. It's like looking at old home movies. And I get to look back and see people that I worked with that I didn't even realize that I worked with that went on to do other, great things and stuff. So it's fun.
Claude. Yes, Claude.
I had not seen Hangman's Knot in quite some time, and so I enjoyed seeing it. I was able to look at it, just from a distance, and I had a bigger role than I thought I did. And Rio Grande, I was amazed because I really had a good part in that movie. You did. And I hadn't realized that until I saw it. I thought, gee, you know what? That was really something. So anyway, I enjoyed it, and
you should have gotten an award for that or something.
Okay.
Well, I was 17 when I did the Cowboys, and when I see the film now, well, I remember the first time I saw the movie, and we're all sitting on that fence for the bucking horse scene. I'm looking for myself because I don't see myself on the fence, and then I see myself. It's like, whoa, that's what I really look like. Ah!
That is funny.
Bobby, were you surprised on how Duke Wayne took your direction on that scene of the fight scene in the Cowboys?
Well, at the time, I was so I got dressed down so badly that it reduced me to tears. I didn't really pay any attention after that. I just wanted to get to lunch and back to my cubby hole and curl up. But when I saw the movie, sure enough, he took it because he says, "You get back up on that fence." He didn't say where you belong. So yeah, I was surprised, Gino.
Hey, Bobby,
Yes, sir.
why did you kill my dad?
Well, Diamond, it was in the script.
That's all you have to say? It was in the script?
Yeah, in fact, out of all of the stunt guys on that show, I said, I think I want to kill Richard. Actually,
Thank God.
the one
Because
I
he
wa-
used to beat the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Well, I'm glad I saved you, man.
Thank you.
This one's for Patrick. Patrick, what did your dad feel about the movie he and Kirk Douglas made together? Yes. How did he like that movie?
I wasn't on the film. I wasn't involved in it. I did hear some stories. I mean, one of the things that Kirk was doing was he was doing all these fancy mounts on the horse, Pony Express mount, Troopers mount, whatever. And, everyone thought, he was like showing off. But then he paid it off by falling on his ass at the end of the film, which was like the payoff of that. Merv Griffin came down and dedicated one of his whole shows to interviewing the people on these films. And so he asked Kirk Douglas what he thought of my dad's politics. And Kirk said, well, he ought to stick to movies. And so Merv goes over and he tells my dad, he says, I asked Kirk about, your politics, and he said you ought to stick to movies. And my dad says he ought to stick to politics.
I do not have a question.
What is the matter with
I'm in absolute awe of all of you there, all of you in the audience. Thank you for enduring.
You have exquisite taste, ma'am.
I am seriously, I cannot wait to go home and watch some of these movies that I've missed. I cannot wait.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Rob.
Well, that's why we're here to honor these people and the classic films that we all love that we can see again in a condition that's different from the way I grew up watching them. We were talking about it the other day. I grew up watching these classic early movies on television, and in those days on television the movies were 16 millimeter prints that were bicycled from one station to another with Q dots punched in them so that the local stations would know when to run a commercial. Now we see them, the 35 millimeters, restored and on Blu-ray, and we've all got giant screens. And it's thrilling. It's like seeing them again or seeing them for the first time because they just sparkle and they're wonderful films. This movie I mentioned that I know most of you haven't seen, the one, with Claude and the prostitutes. Roughshod, that is a movie that has been restored. It is beautiful, black and white, and it's a wonderful relationship that Claude has with not just the women, but his brother, played by Robert Sterling. It's a terrific film, and there are so many. And it's just thank you for mentioning the group here, because without you all, without the fans of these movies, people wouldn't remember them. And we need to talk about them. We need to share these wonderful stories. And thank you. And this is Lone Pine at its best with this great group of celebrities and filmmakers who've joined us here today. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.